Howdy, my name is Tim Wray, and I ranch with my family out at Irricana, Alberta, and I happen to be a pastor at the Lutheran Church of the Master in Airdrie. It's a real privilege that I have a chance to speak with you, so thanks for taking the time as a congregation to consider our relationship to creation. For me, I live this out as a farmer, and so every day I'm out on the land, and I'm with livestock and people. And it's a real joy for me to live out this vocation. It's actually a dream for me to go through this exercise, because for me, I've longed that my farm would be a platform or a place where ministry happens. When we think about how our faith affects our relationships, the Christian term that we use is vocation. In this case, my vocation as a farmer, or as a pastor, or your vocation as a parent, or a nurse, or a cleaner, or whatever, is different from a job. We could differentiate these two things. The difference is that a job you go to, you work your 8 hours, you go home, and you don't worry about it, where a vocation is defined by a certain set of relationships. And we call these relationships fiduciary. It's when you have a call to work in the best interest of these characters that you relate to. As a farmer, I have a fiduciary relationship and responsibility to work in the best interest of the land, the best interest of my business partners, the best interest of the livestock we tend to, the best interest of my children and my wife, and the best interest of the microbes. As a Christian, if I had a word for people today that I believe is a good word, it's that we actually have permission to exist. God invites us to live and to live abundantly. To me, it's helpful to ask, how does this universe actually work? What is abundant life? As Christians, we know Jesus walks a certain way, the way. And how do we in 2019, 2020 walk in a way that has a rhythm of goodness to it, of peace, of shalom, that lives in the pattern of Jesus? This is something that I think about, and it starts with that invitation to accept that we have permission to be on this planet and that we have a role on this planet. People often say that farmers have to have a lot of faith. And what I think they mean by that is that farmers have to live with a high level of uncertainty because so many outside forces affect their livelihood. The other thing that people mean is that farmers have to be somewhat positive. They take great risks, each year hoping that the next year will be better. There's a saying in agriculture, next year. And of course, what they mean is that it didn't work out this year well, maybe next year. For me, my faith isn't as much about positivism than it is about a cruciform Savior. We look to Jesus on the cross, and as he hangs outside of the doors of Jerusalem, we recognize that he has been rejected by the brightest and the best religious, political, and economic systems of his day. What this means for me as a farmer is that as I'm looking for places where I think God could be stirring up life, I have to remember that it's quite possible that they won't be among the brightest and the slickest and the fanciest marketing schemes or powerful market forces or obvious advice of the day. As a Christian, I'm humbled by the cross. And as a farmer, I'm open to seeing the abundant life that may come in places that you will never see on a TV commercial. Scientists have discovered that the real productive capacity of the land is in relationship with the microbes. This whole intricate network, an entire economy that exists underground, out of sight, on the level of trillions of interactions happening, even though we're just planting one crop on top of that. What this means is that what we don't even see, what we don't even notice, is actually what's feeding us and feeding the nutrition in our food. Here is something that really excites me as a farmer. For some time now, we've known that food is one of the dirtiest industries that we have as a society. But farmers are on the forefront and have a chance to not only rebrand but repurpose our agricultural practices so that we become providers of ecological goods. The danger that we have as farmers is that if we mismanage land bases, we end up leaching several things. Carbon leaves the ground and into the atmosphere. Use of chemicals is also problematic when they're not used in the right times, in the right amounts, or in the right places. With regenerative practices, we can take carbon from the atmosphere using photosynthesis and put it into the ground, increase water holding capacity, feed the microbiome, increase food nutrition, and improve the sustainability of our production practices. And what's fun about being a pastor and a farmer is I can preach about these things on Sunday morning, but I have a very real chance to practice them. And when you consider the 3,000 acres that we manage, and you consider the tons of carbon that can be taken by plants through photosynthesis and put into the ground, just me, a small farmer, can have a huge environmental impact. So I'm out there in my fields as a pastor, as a farmer, with eyes of faith saying, show me diversity. Show me how these different things are functioning together and how they're each driving these different aspects of the cycle. For instance, we planted for our cattle some turnips. But they're not just turnips. We planted them in a mixture of cropping. But why the turnip? The turnip can burrow itself deep into the ground, and it creates this massive root. The cattle can't easily pull up a frozen turnip from the ground in the middle of winter. But when that turnip rots, it leaves a hole in the ground, and then our spring thaw can flow down into the ground. That turnip also photosynthesizes into November. These plants are green and active, and they're feeding microbes even in the freezing part of winter. These are things that don't make a great advertising campaign because you can't sell them on the back of a truck and haul them to a grain bin and ship them to Japan. But by paying attention to these small things, we can see how each little part of our farm, each little plant plays a functional role. If I had one last thing to share with you in regards to my faith and my church and farming, I want to let you know that the Alberta Synod partnered up with my farm and Circle M, a nonprofit organization that is the Center for Rural Community Leadership and Ministry. So this NGO, the Alberta Synod, my farm, and many of my business associates are agronomists, some science researchers, another NGO called Food Water Wellness, the Foothills Forage Grazing Association. I'm going on and on. Many partners came together to pair up on a scientific project. We call it a practical research project on our farm, looking at very practical things like what happens when we plant an increasing number of different species in a crop mix together. Can we increase the nutrition in those plants? Can we change the nutritional profile and what's available in the soil? Can we extend the photosynthetic capacity of a land base by having different plants photosynthesizing over a longer period of time, over a myriad of life cycles? So we ran 4 different trials, and the Alberta Synod bought us all the specialty seeds and paid for the special scientific testing on the soil microbes and on the plant tissues. So this was a wonderful thing for me to bring to bear to all these different farming partners and to say, look, my church is getting involved with this. Why? Because my church honors vocations. We recognize that God gives us fiduciary relationships, and we can humbly, with fear and trembling, try to live into those things for the good of others. And so the church took a chance, worked with me and my farm, and we learned a few things that we were able to share with agronomists, farmers, seed salesmen, etc., etc. The gist of it is, more diversity made things better. Thanks to our church, thanks to the Alberta Synod, thanks to all my farming partners, and thanks be to God for a wonderful opportunity to live life as a farmer. I wish you all the best in your own pursuit of wisdom in regards to what it means to relate to this planet as a Christian. Take care.